Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Franchise tag deadline day in the NFL is brought to you by The Clash. Should they stay or should they go? Also, the Celtics blew a 22-point lead, and that's a good thing. And JJ McCarthy made himself, oh baby, a lot of money at the Combine. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
We're still a little over a week away from the opening of the new league year, but the franchise tags were flying absolutely fast and furious on Tuesday. So Tony Wiggins from Locked On Jaguars and Locked On NFL is going to put both those hats on for us here today. And Tony, let's start with Duval and Josh Allen, the pass rusher, coming off a spectacular season, statistically speaking. Why was this the move the Jags made rather than just pay up?
I think Josh is going to try to squeeze a whole bunch of stuff out of him. It's just his turn. And what I mean by that is whenever you're a player at a certain position, when you hit the market, it is your turn to push. It doesn't mean you're the best at your position, but it is your turn to reset everything because that's what the people before you did. That is what you're supposed to do for the next guy. But the Jaguars don't treat him like a guy that they think is worth $33 million per year over 4 years. They just don't. He played on his fifth-year option. That doesn't happen to guys that you like and you love. He's a good guy on and off the field, all of that. They even put out a statement says basically we kind of ran out of time before the deadline, so we tagged him. They didn't even start negotiating with him. He was at the Pro Bowl and he hadn't even heard from him. So this is typical Trent Baalke. Whatever somebody is supposed to do or whatever I'm supposed to do never gets done, but it ain't never really my fault.
As you look around the league at all these other franchise tags, there are a lot of really, really good players who got the tag. Jalen Johnson, Brian Burns, Justin Madubuike coming off a career season, and some other interesting young guys like Michael Pittman Jr. When you see these names, who is someone you have your eye on either because you're going, that guy might be able to become available or just you're interested in what that situation is?
Well, I'm interested to see what Cincinnati does with T. Higgins, who got tagged. And that's because they're already paying their quarterback a bunch of money. They're going to pay T. And the best one they have, in my opinion, is coming down. You know, he's coming down in a couple of years with Jamar Chase. So I'm interested to see what they do because they're another team that's been close, but they're not quite there. And whether they want to spend that money or trade them off for assets and then go younger and then use some of that money and allocate it somewhere else. I think the player that surprised me the most is Christian Wilkins by not getting a tag. In a year where the interior defensive linemen are good, it's a lot of nice little depth with Braden Fiske and guys like that. But the thing is there's not that guy that's in the top 10. Well, there you go. You just had a top 10 injection of a 25-year-old. And Chris Jones is going to be out there too, but people don't really believe he's going to get away from Kansas City. And plus, he's 30, 31. But to have a 25-year-old injected into an offseason where that is not the deepest spot in the draft, I think that's gold for GMs around the league and going to be gold for Christian Wilkins too.
How do you think this affects the free agent market? Because we saw, with these players coming off the board, you start to think if you're another one of these teams like, oh, I'm going to go get Antoine Winfield Jr. I'm going to go get Michael Pittman Jr. And now all of a sudden you see someone like Xavier McKinney in New York, who that was a surprising one for me. I don't know why they wouldn't just keep someone who played his best football last season. Who do you think this pushes up in free agency now that's now going, hey, pay me my money?
Somebody like KJ Osborne. And I'm telling you, it's wild and it's weird to think about it like this, but there are a lot of receivers that people like that are now off the board. Yeah. If your team needs two, you don't want to, unless you're the Green Bay Packers, you don't want to go drafting two rookies. Green Bay look like they can draft four rookies and they'll all turn out to be good. But with a quarterback that nobody said was going to be good, right? So the thing is a guy like that who's caught balls, who can play in the slot for you, who can be your fourth receiver and maybe even your third, but more or less he takes your room that's going to have a young rookie injected into it and he turns the room into a room that has a veteran presence in it, a guy that's worked for everything that he has and continues to try to work for everything that he has. He's that good third, fourth receiver, glue guy that teams will covet around the National Football League that need multiple receivers but don't want two of them to be rookies.
Last question. What do you make of the running back market? Because Saquon Barkley not going to get the tag. We're waiting on some of these other top guys, but it looks like we're going to have a bunch of these guys hit the open market. And it feels like some of them maybe are going to get at least decent contracts. What do you see here?
I think the big time running backs are going to look at a situation. The San Francisco situation was wild because for years everybody said, oh, they can get any running back to run that system. But then they go out and get the best running back in the league, right? So I think what happens is these guys start cherry picking and they're going, you know what? Instead of that $13 million, and I know most people think the money is everything. It can be, but on a short-term contract, instead of that $13 million per year, let me take that 9.5, 10, and I'll go play with Patrick Mahomes. Or let me take that money and I'll go up here with this kid in Buffalo. Or let me take that money. Oh, Joe Mixon's gone. Let me take a 1 or 2 year deal and go to the playoffs every year, and I'll go over here. You know what I'm saying? And what happens is those big names like Saquon Barkley now get a chance to do what the kid in San Francisco did, McCaffrey. You were already good. Now you get in an offense where you can be great and you can be the best player on the team that actually goes somewhere. Man, you can get another bite at the apple if you sign a short deal like Saquon. So I think they're going to really cherry pick their situation and they're going to go to contenders.
Stay up to date all year on the National Football League by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On NFL on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, why is it a good thing the Celtics blew a 22-point lead? Before we answer that, we get a local perspective on the effects of the franchise tag. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime has plenty of last-minute tickets to your favorite team. They also make it easy to get in the gate with flash deals and zone deals. Gametime makes it easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. They've got views from all the seats in the venue. They have the lowest price guaranteed. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, new Gametime users get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. The Indianapolis Colts are making sure they tag Michael Pittman Jr.
But with the non-exclusive tag, you know, I've seen some people respond to this by saying, okay, look, maybe the Colts want to lose him now. Maybe the Colts are open to losing Michael Pittman Jr. for the right price and yada, yada, yada. Like, when teams put the non-exclusive tag on players, I mean, for one thing, it keeps it cheaper because I believe the exclusive tag is a little bit heavier of a price tag. But also the non-exclusive tag, it basically is the common franchise tag we see today. Nobody's paying 2 first-round picks for Michael Pittman Jr., just like with all these other free agents that got it, you know, Jalen Johnson with the Bears, no one's paying 2 first-round picks to acquire him from the Bears. So the non-exclusive franchise tag basically is the exclusive franchise tag, if it makes sense. It's just a cheaper version.
The Panthers, at least for now, not trading Brian Burns. He gets the tag.
So the Panthers have slapped the tag. You can either place a tag like what happened in Indianapolis, where they're still trying to negotiate with Michael Pittman Jr., what happened in Baltimore, where they still want to negotiate with Justin Madubuike, but slapping the tag, a little bit different. The Panthers have had plenty of opportunities now to give Brian Burns what he wants, and they have not been willing to do that. So now they have slapped the tag on him, and we'll see where it goes from here. The last player, by the way, brought this up yesterday on the show. The last player who was given the non-exclusive franchise tag then was provided an offer sheet, and his team said, no, we'll take the 2 first-round picks, was Joey Galloway in 2000 with the Seattle Seahawks. The Cowboys, of course it was the Cowboys who did this, gave him the offer sheet, gave it 2 first-round picks. Seattle got the 2 first-round picks, and one of them became Sean Alexander, and I think things worked out in the long run for the Seattle Seahawks when they decided to not match that offer. So it's been 24 years.
Meanwhile, 2 big-name players not staying, they're going. The Seahawks cut a few former Pro Bowlers.
3 big-time cap casualties today for the Seahawks. Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, and Will Dissly all being released outright. And that might surprise some fans with Jamal Adams that it's not a post-June 1st designation, but all three of those players being released, which means immediate cap space for the Seahawks. Now, according to overthecap.com, Rob, they have $36.6 million in cap space. That allows them to have some flexibility to re-sign some of their own players and have a little wiggle room when free agency opens on March 13th.
Yeah, it gives the Seahawks a fair amount of flexibility. They certainly don't have the most cap space in all of the NFL, but they definitely have a lot more flexibility than they had just 24 hours ago, Corbin. And these are unexpected news. We talked about the possibility that the Seahawks were going to be letting Jamal Adams, Will Dissly, and there had been, of course, some speculation Quandre Diggs was due an awful lot of money as well, that all three of these moves might be coming. I still would anticipate that the Seahawks are going to continue to consider some other options as far as alleviating their salary cap.
An MRI on Jalen Brunson's left knee came back clean, according to head coach Tom Thibodeau. The New York Knicks star guard missed Tuesday's game against the Atlanta Hawks. Brunson went down with what first appeared to be a serious knee injury in the Knicks' win over the Cleveland Cavaliers on Sunday. But Thibodeau said Brunson's knee is feeling better, and the team is taking a cautious approach. The Boston Celtics were on their way to a league-leading 49th win. They were coasting. They were getting the duck boats ready for June. John Corrales had planned the party. He had started getting the confetti ready. John Corrales from Locked On Celtics joins me now because in the fourth quarter, John, the Celtics got outscored by 17. The Cleveland Cavaliers came back from 22 down to stun Boston in Cleveland. And some of the things that we've been talking about on the show for the last couple of years with the Celtics, the things that have held them back, again, reared their ugly heads in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, look, I think getting humbled like this isn't the worst thing in the world for the Celtics. I think for most of this game, they were simply outclassing the Cavs. Yeah. And then but the funny thing is, I had been saying all along, like, wow, the Celtics aren't executing well tonight. They aren't making the same reads that they usually make. They aren't playing as crisply as they normally are. And yet here they are building a 10-point lead, 15-point lead, 22-point lead. And it's funny how it came back to bite them, because so many of those reads that they could have made earlier would have helped them if they had been making them in the fourth quarter. It's a twofold thing. It's, you give up a perfect shooting third quarter, right? And even great shooters miss every once in a while, but there's a shrugging like, hey, they went 8 for 8 and Dean Wade scored 20 points in the fourth quarter. Like you got to laugh at that and be like, that's not going to happen very often. But also like they stopped defending, and the fourth quarter, when you have a lead, is all about just getting buckets so the other team can't put a run together. And the Celtics didn't execute on offense, and especially down the stretch, especially on that last possession. So it's a great lesson where the Celtics have been doing all of this because their heads were in the right place and because they were executing well. And you had a 9-minute stretch where you completely abandoned that stuff, and this is what happened. So it's a great teaching moment.
Yeah, the league is just that good. I mean, the Boston Celtics are by far the best team in the league, but some of the advanced metrics, like one of the best teams of the last 10 years, frankly. And yet you score 17 points in the fourth quarter. Like, there's a good chance you're going to lose some of these games. The fourth quarter defense, the fourth quarter offense, this has been something that hurt them in the finals against the Warriors, and certainly in the Heat series last year. What do they need to do to get this worked out? Because they are incorporating these new players, Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, of course, but they don't seem to quite have a plan consistently, and sometimes shots just don't fall too, right?
Yeah, right. And so this is why I'm kind of hanging my hat on the teachable moment thing, because the Celtics did execute well when they got the ball to Porzingis and Drew Holiday made the backdoor cut and they got that open layup. And it's like, wow, you don't have to go through Tatum and Brown all the time. So when you put on the game film, this is a great opportunity for Missoula to look at Jason Tatum and be like, hey, buddy, like, we love you, you're great and all of that. But when you are drawing attention and you get it to Porzingis, things like this can happen. and it was the easiest bucket they scored all night, and it was in the clutch. But when you aren't aware and you get too caught up in whatever you got caught up in, that last 19 seconds happens. You're down 1. You got to go out there. You got to try to score as quickly as possible, get the lead, and then go defend and try to get the ball back. It's about maximizing possessions. You had 2 timeouts, and I agreed with Joe Mazzulla not calling one because you had weak defenders on the floor. So go attack that matchup right away. Just it's mentality. It's just, I don't know what happened with Jason Tatum. It is something that he's done before. So this has to be something that they hammer home, be like, hey, buddy, you want to know why you're not the MVP and not, further up in the MVP discussion? This is why, because MVPs know how to execute down the stretch here, and you consistently haven't in these particular situations. So you gotta figure this part out.
Is this one of those two? Like, I know this is a narrative that can start. I remember this happened with the Bucks a couple years ago. They're just blowing everybody out. And so they sort of didn't have the muscle memory of let's deal with this in crunch time. You're not going to just blow everybody out in the playoffs. As good as they've been in the regular season, they're going to need to execute in these moments in the playoffs to win these series.
It's funny because I literally just tweeted that out like a couple of days ago saying, I'm sure that Joe Mazzulla would love to get a few crunch time situations, whichever way they go, so they can get some of these reps. This is important stuff. Like, I'd rather have this happen now against the Cavs.
And let's be honest, the losses don't matter. They have such a big lead in the East. Like, the Bucks are not going to catch them.
Right. It's just not going to happen. The Celtics have to completely collapse, and the other teams have to be almost perfect.
Stay up to date all year on the Boston Celtics by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Celtics on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, JJ McCarthy made him some money at the Combine. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your NBA players, your favorite teams, quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Always give yourself a chance to boost that payout with a same-game parlay. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. You also have the odds on the number 3 pick in the NFL draft. They have Jaden Daniels and Drake May currently tied as the favorites to get picked. Plus 150, Marvin Harrison 4-1. And number 3 overall, JJ McCarthy sits at 750. Better than 7-1 to be number 3 overall. I might have to go take that. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA and official sportsbook of Locked On. We know who the top quarterbacks are in the upcoming NFL draft, but it's a deep group. JJ McCarthy made a name for himself and stood out with his performance at the Combine, according to our Locked On NFL draft hosts.
The most polarizing player and QB in the 2024 NFL draft class, I say, when you ask the question, did he make him some money, Keith? I think he did, right? Because I think there were some questions about I saw some people question his arm talent, right? Well, he was out there easily throwing at 60-plus yards, and he wanted to showcase that, right? Showcase his arm talent, showcase his just the arm strength that he has. We know he can. He has the velocity to zip it into tight windows, work the middle of the field, but outside the numbers, down the field, can you get it down there, right? Now, he did not complete a lot of those passes because I think he was just trying to show off his arm, but it's also something that he does need to work on. It's something that I think I put in my scouting report over at the Draft Network that he needs to improve on the deep ball accuracy outside the numbers and just put a little bit more air, a little bit more arc, more of a feathery touch on some of those passes to allow guys to run underneath them when they get a step. But also, I think why he also made himself some money. If you remember when Xavier Worthy ran that 4.21, right? He broke the record from John Ross. One of the first people over there to congratulate him was freaking JJ McCarthy. That's not even his quarterback. Quinn Ewers was his quarterback from Texas. Quinn Ewers is still at Texas, right? So for JJ McCarthy, he was out there just being a supportive teammate and just being a good teammate to guys that he probably just met for the first time.
JJ McCarthy is like if you took all of the words that we hear coaches and analysts use to describe quarterbacks who are not the most athletically gifted, the most physically gifted, and you put them in the body of a 20-year-old quarterback who is actually physically gifted. Now, he's not Josh Allen or Cam Newton in terms of physical tools, not by any means. But JJ McCarthy, by all accounts, and you heard our draft guys talk about this, wowed teams in the meeting rooms. A winner in college, just won the national title. Jim Harbaugh raves about this guy, former NFL quarterback, who everywhere he's gone, all he's done is win. That stuff matters to NFL teams. But then you also look at him and you go, okay, the same reason that any quarterback gets drafted, the upside, the potential, he can get even better. All of those caveats also apply to JJ McCarthy. He's not Mac Jones. He's not fully formed at his peak already. He has these intangibles that NFL teams are obsessed with. But also, they can talk themselves into the upside, that he can get even better. Given more opportunities, he can be Matt Ryan in the NFL. Slightly more mobile. Okay, come on. A much more mobile Matt Ryan in the NFL. I don't want to be too hard on Matt Ryan. Early in his career, he can move a little bit better. That's a pretty tantalizing prospect. And remember, Matt Ryan went top 10. It's looking more and more like JJ McCarthy is going to follow him. And finally, more than 10,000 college football players have already opted in for EA Sports College Football 25, EA Sports, which will launch this summer. One player that will not be in the game, it's in the game, is Texas quarterback Arch Manning. He was among the list of players who did not opt in to the deal with EA. Players who opt in have their name, image, and likeness. They will get $600 and a copy of the game, about $70. He wanted to focus on football. That was the reason that he was given, which I get. A lot of football players like to play Madden and NBA 2K in their off times. I guess he doesn't. Then doesn't even want to think about it. Cool. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, can anyone in the Eastern Conference keep the Celtics from the finals this year? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.